Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. It's great to be in this space. I hope you can hear me and see me okay. My name is Malis. I use she and her pronouns. I'm currently based in Cote d'Ivoire in West Africa. For anyone who needs a bit of a visual description, I'm a Black cisgender female presenting person. I have Black Afro hair. I'm wearing a pair of pattern glasses, cream top, and sitting in what looks like a bird cage, but is actually my chair. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a transformational coaching consultant. And I also wear another hat as the program director at We Create Space. We've got a couple of slides just to kind of tell you a bit about us if it's your first time here connecting with us. So we are a community-led platform. We're also a consultancy and a collective of queer change makers really on this mission to improve the lives of LGBTQ plus people around the world. And we really do this through supporting 100 plus businesses, corporate partners at varying levels of their DEI journey. And through consultancy, we designed and shared experiences and produced DEI insights and craft bespoke content that supports individuals and really strengthens their roles as change agents within their communities and organizations. And so as a social enterprise, well, it's one of the things that we're really passionate about is connecting with the LGBTQ plus community, but being also able to give back. So our profit really goes to creating and producing free events, both in person and online like this one, and create free resources. You may have seen our queer allyship lexicon. So invite you to check that out as well, but along with other leadership development opportunities and programs and well-being solutions. And we're really proud over the last 2 years to have delivered over 1,000 plus events and shared experiences, and also really invested over £350,000 back into the LGBTQ plus community. So last words and really last slides on this. How can you get involved? Well, you're already doing it. You're here in this space with us and you're more than welcome. We invite your questions, your thoughts, your ideas, and your perspectives effectively. You can also, if you want to, continue supporting us. You can share our social posts. You can also amplify our speakers and our projects. You can introduce us to your employers and your colleagues if you feel some of our events resonate and this is something you would like to bring to your own workplace. Okay, we're going to pause on this, try to speed through it as much as I can, but it's a great opportunity as well for you to discover what we do. So get comfortable. If you're returning to our sessions, this has been part of the Pride and Beyond series, and we've been exploring various topics that are really leaning to queer leadership, queer allyship, and this one in particular, really this exploration of intersectional networks and how we can potentially scale impact and scale connection as well by creating synergy across all of our movements, but also all of the identity groups that have employee resource groups and are able to connect and create an impact internally as well. So that being said, we always encourage you to participate as much as possible. The chat is open. Also engage with the session in a way that supports your well-being and how you share, what you share. We will do our best to bring forward any trigger warnings where needed. But effectively, we're really hoping together to bring forward some key takeaways and really valuable solutions. So I'm going to hand over to Tolu, our awesome moderator for today. Tolu, please just introduce yourself and take us away. Welcome all the other panelists and I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Malis, and very excited to be here today. And welcome to this live panel discussion where we're going to explore how to facilitate intersectional conversations and also strengthen ERG collaborations to support the most marginalised within our community and also organisations. Let me introduce myself as the moderator today. So I'm really excited about our fantastic panel, as you can see on screen, and we'll introduce them shortly. But my name is Tolu Osanubi. My pronouns are she and her. And a quick visual description of myself. I'm a mass-presenting dark-skinned Black woman, short-textured Afro hair, and I am wearing a black T-shirt. and I'm a senior manager at Deloitte. And my role, I'm a software testing engineer and manage a team of testers, and I work in the consulting industry, but I'm also part of our leadership team for our Proud network, which is Deloitte's LGBTQ+ network. And I drive the strategy around how we celebrate intersectional identities and also collaborating with networks internally, but also externally to our organization as well. And I also have a lot of involvement in our firm-wide Black experience work around the grassroots initiatives in that space. So really passionate about today's conversation. And what we really want to focus on in this session is looking at how we really interrogate some of the challenging socio-political climate. And I think with a lot of rising conflict around ideologies and beliefs, I think that can feel very overwhelming to navigate as someone from a marginalized group or an employee in that kind of space, where it often seems like there is a fight that you're called in to fight and advocate on several fronts. And also sort of the facing competing agendas across various resourcing groups. And also I think finally really going into how we really create effective structural, legal and systemic change within our organizations. I think it's really crucial to really look at the reimagining of the role of our resource networks, and also prioritizing partnerships across that, and how we really help scale that connection and impact across the piece. And those are some of the things that we're really going to dive into today. But before we introduce the panel, something we do want to do is dive into some audience participation, and we really want to hear from you. So we're planning to do a bit of a poll first. So you should see, hopefully, tell me if you do not, a question pop on screen. And I will read that question for you. So the question is, do you feel your ERGs are intentionally working together to drive DEI initiatives forward in a meaningful way? So do you feel your ERGs are intentionally working together to drive DEI initiatives forward in a meaningful way? And the options are absolutely, there is some visible collaboration, they don't seem to be working together, or I'm not sure, how would I tell? I think we have our results coming through, and based on some of the results so far, I can see that there are some people who are attending this session, so 60%, which is our highest, that there is some visible collaboration, which is really positive. And if you do have any examples you want to share, please feel free to drop them in the chat. But then 16% is absolutely, there's clear collaboration, so that is really positive. And then we've got some of our attendees which aren't seeing that happening, and we've got some people, 11%, not sure, and how would I tell? So I think, thank you for sharing some of those insights, but hopefully our discussion today and some of the experiences that our panel are going to share with you, and some of those key learnings, will provide you with some ideas or tips to be able to, take some of those things forward. So before we really dive into that conversation, I want to introduce our fantastic panel. So I'll start with Marion. Do you want to introduce yourself, a bit about your name, your pronouns, and also a bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you very much, Tolu. So my name is Marion Bentata, and my pronouns are she and her. My day job is Chief Administrative Officer on the technology side of State Street, which is an American bank. And my gay job is chair of the Inclusion Subcommittee of Interbank, which is the network of LGBTQ+ networks for financial services firm in the UK. I am also the founder of Women of Interbank, the women's group of Interbank. And finally, I sit on the steering committee of the State Street UK Pride Network, after having co-chaired this network for a number of years. For those of you who can't see me, I'm a white cisgender presenting female. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that intro. I'll pass on to Hunter to give us an intro.
Hi everyone, my name is Hunter. I use he, him pronouns. For those of you that might not be able to see me very well, I'm a white transgender presenting man. I have blue eyes and dark brown coiffed hair. I'm wearing a white t-shirt underneath a blue and white striped short sleeve shirt. I'm sitting in a wooden chair in front of a like teal green background wall. I'm currently working as a legal analyst at Herbert Smith Freehills, based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I'm also part of their LGBTQ plus network, the Iris Network, and I've really enjoyed working there. And I'm also moving on to new spaces as well within the Western Trust in Northern Ireland as well.
And then Julie, can you give us a bit of an intro?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Adaluz J. Balaz. Many of you may know me as Julie Balaz. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. I'm an Afro-Latina female with brown hair wearing a fun blazer. I'm an EVP at Ketchum, a communications consultancy, part of the Omnicom network. And I'm also part of Acento, which is OMC's global ERG, Latina and Hispanic network. At Ketchum, I'm excited to represent and share all of the fantastic things that we're doing. And I'm part of the DIE leadership team over there as well. So I do wear some multiple hats, and this conversation is so timely. So thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, and I'm really glad to have you all with us today. And I think really looking at some of our poll results, we saw a real spread around interactions with where we're seeing intentionality in our ERGs working together to really drive DEI initiatives. And I really want to stay on that topic of harnessing collective power, and also maybe some of the inevitable challenges and particularly barriers to drive DEI transformation across organisations. So Julie, if I start with you, can an organisation's ERG really leverage their collective power to drive towards DEI objectives?
Yes. Short answer, I'm done teasing. Yes, absolutely. So you gave me DEI. I'll give you a little bit of more, alphabet words. So I think it begins with advocacy. ERGs have this powerful voice. From most of ERG folks are usually part of the marginalized talent community. We have the power to advocate. We have the power to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, in terms of like challenging the systems. Because if we're not challenging the systems, and if the systems are not made for us, then there's really no equity. And I think that is something that an ERG can really lean into. I think it's also our responsibility as ERG and ERG leaders to make sure that our hallways start reflecting the markets that we serve, because I do feel that innovation doesn't live in homogeny. I think belonging is the next word. We have the power to create the space where people feel like they can bring their best selves to work. And no, I didn't say authentic selves, because Party Julie does not make it to work. But we wanted to bring our whole selves, right? And that is okay. What part of myself do I want to share at work? And do I feel psychologically safe to do so, right? And I think the next one is my C for commitment. I think right before we started talking about how many of the ERGs are usually the same people in the same choir singing the same song, and we want to see more of those allies to come in to the ERGs. We'll make space for you. Really, we want your allyship. And I'll end it with the D of designing for the margins. Like, we have the power to create really good programming and interventions and really challenge the systems. And every time that we design for those most at risk, everyone benefits. So I think that ERG, the intersectional allyship of the group, is critical, especially when we try to educate those that may not feel that they're part of the DEI community. But we're all diverse. We are all diverse, and that's what makes intersectionality and these dimensions of diversity conversations so important.
Thank you very much, Julie. Lots of gems there. And I think that point you made as well around lots of that it is sometimes if it is everybody, singing from the same hymn sheet, we need more people with, different perspectives, different ideas, maybe some things where we clash, because that way we can really get to change in a bit more of a different and dynamic way. So Hunter, if I ask you the same question, that can an organisation's ERG really leverage their collective power to drive towards DEI objectives, but also if you can name one barrier preventing this?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, hate to steal Julie's answer, but yes, the obvious answer is yes, they can. I know at HSF, like our ERGs were one of the main reasons I felt safe enough to be openly trans and queer at work. I felt empowered by them to demand more from the company as the only openly trans person in that company, and basically as their touchstone to all the many communities I'm a part of. I think collectively ERGs have more power than some companies are probably willing to admit. In today's society, people, especially multiply marginalised people, are asking for more from their jobs than just a livable wage. Companies that offer a diverse workforce with support and a clear game plan to encourage and uplift minority communities ultimately are more profitable, and it also makes for, I hate to say it, a great marketing tool. It brings in more people as well as keeping more people full time. Whereas conversely, I think a lot of us within those communities can't actually afford to lose the safety of those kinds of jobs that offer us that kind of support, even if it is, just mere tolerance of our existence. Because even if a wage isn't competitive, using that in a market where we can't be our full selves at work, we can't bring ourselves safely to an office, it's just not worth it. And I think one of the main barriers to like the DEI objectives being met recently, from my perspective, is money. While we help these businesses make more and more profit, we unfortunately aren't seeing that money be rightfully fed back into us in any meaningful way. Our networks and groups are being given less time, smaller budgets, and more pressure to create events and share resources throughout the whole year to continue meeting these objectives and vastly exceeding them. And yet, when the company is told that this is fundamentally an issue, it seems to just be ignored, and they expect us to just continue to volunteer this time and energy anyway.
So many things in there, Hunter, and also demanding more. That's fire. Yeah, and we should be. So absolutely. And I think that as well, you've made a really important point, and I think it might be quite a running theme around budgets and particularly constraints in budgets, making it much harder to be able to achieve some of the strategic DEI objectives that maybe some of the ERGs are pushing for, and also looking to drive. But that really makes me think about, when we are talking about the, demanding more, and some of the barriers such as budget, that a lot of this is surrounded around the topic of accountability, but particularly accountability of senior leaders and stakeholders in this. And they often are a huge part of mobilizing things like budget and change and making decisions about some of those things. So Marion, can you share some of your thoughts on how can ERGs and networks build senior stakeholder engagement in their organizations, and also hold those senior leaders accountable for their commitments to DEI?
Absolutely, Tolu. Thank you for the question. So let me start by saying that there is a business case and there is a human case, right? Diversity, inclusion, and equity is a human imperative, and I assume that all of us around this virtual table will agree with this. And sometimes people at the top of the house in the organizations we evolve in understand this, and sometimes they don't, right? When they do, it obviously makes our mission much easier. But when they don't, I think it's our role as ambassadors of our respective causes to make sure that if the human case doesn't resonate with senior stakeholders, we should fall back on something which I view as more of a pragmatic approach, something that is more corporate based, by finding arguments which will strike a chord at the top of the house and will ultimately help us bring more allies and therefore more power around the table. Because let's not be naive about this. If we don't get management's buy-in, we won't be able to go very far. And if we don't make sure that we adapt our message to a crowd that is not necessarily well versed about what's going on in certain niche communities of society, we would never make meaningful progress. So the onus is on us to adapt our message, use what I call basic marketing techniques to make it easily understandable by people who know nothing about the struggles of women and LGBTQIA plus people in the workplace. We almost need to build some sort of an elevator pitch kind of message to make sure that what we expect from senior stakeholders is articulated in a way that makes sense to them, resonates with them, and leads us all in the right direction. Or at least that's what I have personally seen throughout the years work very well. And that's how I got my management buy-in when I needed it.
Thank you very much, Marion. Lots of, I think lots of things in there, and I like the split of the so the business case and the human case. Also, I often think, because the topic we're very much about the intersectional networks part, that how can we knit those things together as well to make that really definitive piece for those senior stakeholders around their commitments, around the accountability piece, because there's probably those two parts to it. So thank you very much for sharing that, and also how you've seen that really succeed within your organization. I want to transition in terms of our topics into a bit more around looking at networks in the lens of intersectional allyship, and also how we create intersectional safe spaces in those contexts, because it's something that I'm very aware of, and I think everybody on this panel, on the call, has benefited from the creation of intersectional safe spaces where individuals can really, meet community, but also lean into all of their identities and connect with others, but also connect with allies in those spaces. So Hunter, if I start with you, so from your lived experiences, how does your intersectional experience influence the networks and communities you access within your organization, and also where are the gaps and opportunities?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because I think when I first joined my organization, I chose to be open about my transness and my goals in transitioning both medically and socially. And I felt it was something that I both wanted to do, but also something I was unfortunately had to do, because at that point in time, I was pre-hormone treatments, pre-surgery, and that meant my ability to pass as a cis person was minimal at best. But thankfully, the opportunities that I found from being open about my transness and my experience as a trans person were just incredible. I was able to fill a gap in my company that allowed for me to help them reorganize their medical care priorities, their gendered spaces at work, and their focus on pride events, trans day visibility events, and Trans Awareness Week as well. The knowledge I had about not only being a trans man, but living as part of my life as a non-binary person and offering a better understanding of transness, I believe ultimately made the company a safer and more supportive place. And similarly with my mental health journey, it was also something I was very used to sharing publicly, because that's just the type of person that I am, as it helped me and others understand my boundaries, my needs better. So when I started taking medication a few months into my role at HSF, it was a major change that helped me immensely, but also created some new unforeseen issues into how I worked and the way things worked for me. So our organization was very well versed in mental health needs as a law firm, but I felt there was definitely an opportunity for growth during the COVID-19 pandemic, where the vast majority of those who suffered and who are continuing to suffer through this pandemic are disabled and have mental health issues. So when we're expected to return to everyday life with the risks that are still ongoing, and to still make more profit and complete more work while getting used to a new way of living life, it felt insincere and quite honestly harmful. And personally today, it still kind of does. And that kind of follows on, from a neurodiverse perspective, I still think there's a lot of work and education that needs to be done. I'm still quite early on in my own journey, finding a way to live without a full medical diagnosis because of the costs and the wait lists, while also still having to ask for support and access needs. It's a bit of an honest to God minefield. I've never felt as uncertain and embarrassed of myself at times as I have when struggling with these kinds of issues. So when I have tried to access the networks and communities around me, I've held myself back as there has been previous misunderstandings because of this miseducation. And there have been people who they're made aware that I have anxiety issues. So when I said, I was like, oh, I might have ADD or I might have ADHD, they just thought, oh, is this another part of your anxiety? And I had to explain myself, and it felt like there was a clear gap in the training materials. That once more, it was entirely down to me to be the educator, even though I was in myself a complete novice in this area. So while I previously would have embraced educating others and providing guidance from my communities as well as my own personal needs, there still comes a time where it feels like you're always the one providing free materials and being the only person that these people go to as a touchstone. And for me, that's harmful as well. Like, as a guy who's now kind of cis passing and white and works in a male dominated career and profession, I shouldn't be the person people go to for a lot of these things. It shouldn't rely on me for many reasons like that.
Thank you so much, Hunter, for sharing and really highlighting, I think, some of those opportunities around, because of those lived experiences being almost an ignition to drive change in some of those spaces, but then equally some of the challenges of being, I guess, the only one in some of those spaces, or also being the one that people go to, creating additional pressures and maybe some unintended consequences. So thank you. So if I move to Mariam on the same question, that based on some of your lived experiences, that how does your intersectional experience influence the networks and communities that you access within your organization?
Yes. So in a nutshell, I tend to be a spectator in women's networks and an actor in LGBTQ plus networks. Mind you, being French, living in the UK and working for an American bank, I'm always the one with a funny accent in the room, but let's put this aside for the purpose of today's conversations. So why am I a spectator in women's networks and more proactive on the LGBTQ plus side? When I first arrived in the UK 13 years ago, there was no LGBTQ plus network or out role models in the bank that I used to work for. And there were very few women in the room at the LGBTQ plus networking drinks and events that I used to attend. So for me, the gaps that you alluded to in your question were evident from the start. On top of that, the LGBTQ plus networks that were formed in the subsequent years in the financial services sector were all heavily gay white male dominated. And why is that? Why are LGBTQ plus women still to this day remarkably absent from ERGs they should in theory feel like they belong to in the workplace? So let's be honest about this. We're still evolving in a heavily heteronormative and white male dominated environment. So as queer women, we remain a minority within the minority. We lack in representation and visibility. We don't really see people who look like us around us. This is why we're far more likely to suppress part of our identity to fit in. Now, you can't really hide the fact that you're a woman, right? So guess which part of your identity you are going to sacrifice on the altar of conformity and in order to blend in and feel like you belong. Very few LGBTQIA plus women are out in the workplace. So when you ask me how my intersectional experience influences the networks and communities I access within my organization, the answer is obvious. I go where I'm most needed because representation and visibility are crucial. I like the fact that somebody agrees 100% with me right now. I always go back to the old adage, you can't be what you can't see. And although I somehow do believe that you can be what you can't see, I think it requires much more effort, energy, and strength than what would have otherwise been needed. So by being present and visible in LGBTQ plus networks, and more broadly in the workplace and beyond, I attempt to fill a gap because queer women don't have enough role models out there to represent them. And also because ultimately, I want to create a safe space for people like me by telling women, it's okay to come out, it's okay to be visible. See, I did it, and I continue to have a career in the city. And if every single one of us did it, we would normalize the conversation about being a queer woman in the workplace. We would use the platforms made available to us to educate, to increase visibility and representation, and fight stigma and stereotypes.
Thank you very much, Marianne. And also, similarly, nodding with agreement, yeah, representation and visibility has so much importance, but so much impact on, you know, people's experiences. And I think you talked about the quote, you can't be what you can't see. That sometimes I think about it in the, we're still in the phase of you have to be what you can't see, but that has to change. So, same question as well to Julie. Based on your lived experiences as well, that how does your intersectional experience influence the networks and communities you access, but also same thing around some of the gaps and opportunities as a result?
Fantastic answers so far. And Hunter, here, neurodivergent as well, living my best ADHD life. So I am a parent of a queer child, and if I get a little emotional, please bear with me. It's really important to me to just create this world where my son doesn't feel like, I mean, I have to take a step back. I remember when he came out to me, and candidly, I knew he was gay probably before he knew he was gay, and I was just kind of waiting for him to catch up to me. But he said to me, I was scared to come out. And I said, why? We always have been an inclusive household, but it's just that stigma of coming out, and he came out to me, we're washing dishes. He's like, Mom, I have to tell you a story. I have to tell you something cool. And he said that to me, and I said, okay. And I don't know what he was expecting. And then the fear came on his face, and he said, what about Dad? And I said, okay. I said, Junior wants to tell you something. And without missing a beat, he said, oh, you're gay? Yeah, we know. Now my son says that I have not given him a good gay coming out story. So I've given him some permission to horrify it just a little bit so that he can, as he says to me, have queer credit. So I am that house. I am the house that you can come. It's a safe space. And the reason why I wanted to share that story is because not everyone has that experience. And besides all of the things that we've gone through with COVID, with the race riots, and everything that's been going on in society, we have a significant mental health crisis. And this youth is coming to the workplace. So taking all of that framing, I have to think about these things in the way that we think about programming, and we think about access, and we think about benefits. I think that it's important for us to bring what we live at home and what we see at home into work in a way that we can say, hey, this is really what's happening in society. Because sometimes it's been in my experience talking about leadership, is sometimes you need to be the voice, although you don't want to have that role. But I think when you get into an ERG, you know that you're taking on that position to be the voice, to be the loud, to be the positive deviant for change. And I think when I think about the opportunities, I think allyship has been watered down a little bit. I need you to be an advocate. I need you to be an activist. I need you to be a co-collaborator for good trouble. And I think, I've been thinking about this in a novel concept of, do we have to have an ERG for allies to merge together and learn? Because I think there's also an opportunity for us to create that space. I feel a lot of the non-wanting to speak up is based on, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to get canceled for saying the wrong thing? Do I have the psychological safety to fail? And does the organization or my peers have the empathy to call me in and not out and say, hey, you microaggressed me, or, you misgendered them. I think that that's where we need to get to a space where that empathy is part of the organizational culture, so that we can have healthy conversations without fear of saying the wrong thing, and not saying anything at all is actually that deafening silence that does prevent a lot of these initiatives to fail.
Wow, Julie, amazing. So many amazing gems in there. And I wrote down as your positive deviant for change. Love that. Love that. And also all the things you said around really bringing the allyship piece to life. And also particularly about the idea of if organizations don't have that culture of a tolerance for failure, it reminds me of what Brené Brown talks about with if you don't have that, you don't have creativity, you don't have innovation, you don't have change. So absolutely. So on that, I think sticking with that topic of allyship, but also very much we're talking about allyship with an intersectional lens, and it very much means it's not something that you can sort of pick and choose what you stand behind as an ally. I want to go to Marion, that how can ERG networks practically demonstrate that intersectional allyship for each other? If you can give me one tip or example of this.
Yes, I can certainly share what we have been doing at Interbank, which was historically very heavily gay white male dominated, as you are probably aware, Tolu. So when I first came on board many years ago, we won't say how many years ago, I was one of very few women who had been part of the committee, and we decided as a group that things needed to change in order to make our network more inclusive. But the thing is, we didn't necessarily know where to start. So we had conversations about it, and it became quickly apparent that our community was plagued by a number of misconceptions. For example, the men of Interbank believed that the onus was on women to make things change if they wanted their situation to improve. They didn't necessarily understand the particular stigma facing the female subgroup, and the fact that, for instance, and you might find that silly or very simple, but it can be quite denting for a woman to walk into a room full of men. So we had plenty of conversations on this internally, and now that most of the men who sit on our committee are educated around these issues, they understand that they have a responsibility to use their already established privilege to champion and empower their female colleagues and friends. They understand that if they see a woman who is on her own at one of our drinks or events, their duty as allies is to make her feel welcome and to create a safe environment for her or them. Same thing when it comes to ethnic minorities. We at Interbank now understand that we need to make everyone feel welcome, regardless of their background, and that's what we have now been doing for a number of years. I believe that quite often, just like a lot of things in life, it's a matter of education. If we want to create a level playing field for everyone, we need every single one of us to understand not only what our own privileges are, but how to help those who don't have access to the same opportunities to reach the same level as we are.
Thank you very much. And I think thanks for sharing some of those tips and also that journey. And I think that it's a lot around the recognition of the privilege that you have in whatever space you're operating in, but having that self-awareness to then take the step of not just knowing that you have privilege, but then starting to actively, or I should say proactively, using that privilege to advocate with others or drive change within the spaces that you operate and have influence in. And so, Hunter, similar question to you. If you can give any tips or examples of how ERGs or networks can practically demonstrate intersectional allyship for each other.
Yeah, I think something very straightforward and very simple to do, and something that I always recommend as a general rule. Just please ask your community members for their input. It's just that easy. Please don't assume that you're catering to everyone and that everybody's needs are being met. And people just won't offer up their input unless asked a lot of the time. And a lot of minority groups will just rather do it themselves or just keep to themselves. So if you want to create a space that can honestly demonstrate intersectional allyship, ask for input, make notes, and listen to your critics.
Thank you very much. And I think that point is really spot on, that if we are looking to create these spaces or be allies, we need to actually pull people in to have these conversations, but also pull them into a space of psychological safety for these conversations as well. Yeah. And I think on the topic, our final topic, and kind of looking more at the way of the way things have shifted in terms of ways of working and also hybrid working post-COVID, that's inevitably brought some flexibility, but also some of the challenges which I think our panelists have highlighted in some of their answers already, in how we continue to keep that connection and support. So to you, Julie, in this hybrid working world, what measures have you implemented with your network to strengthen connection and support for your colleagues and clients? And how is intersectionality part of that?
All right, that's gave me a tough one here. All right, but you know, when I think about intersection, return to office, hybrid, the virtual world, AI, I'm really focusing on the intersection of human. I think we have been through so much these years. I can safely say, although I'm not medically diagnosing everyone here, that we are definitely carrying some trauma, either we recognize it or not. So when I'm thinking about return to office or hybrid, and how we can support that, is it has to be tied with some tenets. And before I share those, I want to challenge everyone to stop thinking about really the office as this physical location, because it really is now this place of omni connection between physical, virtual, and as I say it, the scary AI. I think that people are fundamentally rethinking about their relationship with work out of medical necessity, isolation, social upheaval, widening equity gaps, inflation, war, and everything else that's going on. And it's really taking a place of taking a toll on our resilience. So when I'm thinking of how we create the space, this omni-connected space where people feel like they can bring their best version of themselves, it has to be with equity, well-being, purpose, psychological safety, flexibility, trust, empathy, communication, and all of that also in a satisfaction and engagement and achievement. Because we've been in this virtual space for so long, we also want to make sure that we're still interconnected as humans, and that our work still, there's purpose to our work, because we have been in this, non-human connected way, at least in a physical environment. So what does that look like? At least, in Ketchum, we could say we've been looking at this through different lenses. So benefits, are they inclusive and they cover the needs of our different dimensions of diversity and are most at risk? When we think about purpose in office, are we making folks that either join a meeting or a virtual, or even if they're hybrid or on-site, is it purposeful? Are we creating those moments that matter, and creating the space for social interaction for those that are not in the office? At Ketchum, we have different programs. One of them is called Flex and Flow, where you don't have to make a big deal about going to a doctor's appointment. You can flex those hours and come back. I work better at night because I'm neurodivergent, so I work at night. We have another one called Respect the Purple, where Fridays we don't do office. We try very hard. Sometimes it slips in to do meetings because I need time to do my desired zone work, the stuff that makes me really excited. And uninterrupted time is really, really important for somebody with ADHD. When we think about those that are in physical locations and not, when we're having a meeting or an event and there's food involved, we send folks DoorDash bucks so that they can eat with us, so they don't feel like, oh man, I missed out on that amazing food. And it seems flippant, but these are the points of interaction that if you think about it, where do we talk the most? Probably at lunch, sharing things with one another about family. So it is critical, although it seems small. Making sure that team members feel seen. I think this is where managers have to play a better role in making sure that your team members are not feeling siloed. Have a happy hour. It doesn't have to be alcoholic. Do a trivia. Ping someone and say, hey, how's your work doing? How are you doing? How, as much as you feel comfortable. I think that those moments that matter are really important. And I think lastly is communicate. Don't assume that people know things. I think that that's where the office cooler I think has suffered the most. Like, we assume that people know. So I always try to be very transparent and communicate when, when things are happening within the workplace. We don't have the luxury to be with each other anymore. And physical connection is a luxury, but having a virtual coffee, having lunch, creating those moments that matter is really what will keep employees engaged. That was a very long answer, Tolu. I'm sorry. And you're on mute.
I'm on mute, of course.
I have one.
One moment.
Bingo. You're on mute.
Okay. It's got to happen at least once in the session. But I was saying, thank you, that there's lots of stuff in there that you said that's really helpful and practical things that that organizations, or particularly you mentioned the point around managers and the impact they can have, can be taken away from this conversation. Thank you very much. And I do think what we want to do now is spend some time looking at what we have in Q&A. So there are a couple of questions, and I might try and merge the questions because I've got some similar themes, and feel free to jump in on any responses you have as the panel. So thank you for all your experiences you shared, and also some really helpful tips of what you're doing in your organizations, and also from your lived experiences. So this question is, do you think being active in ERG networks, particularly if you are open about your intersectionality, helps or hinders career progression?
I'm happy to start on that. Just as a person who literally, this is my first job since I graduated. So I'm now only turning 24 and I'm leaving this job for another one. And I found that the things that I offered from being open and sharing my experiences made my time at HSF incredibly valuable. I networked with people I never would have dreamt of meeting, and including everybody here and everybody we create space. I have not regretted almost a single moment of my time being open and offering myself and my experiences. So from like a younger person's perspective, new in the workforce, I think yes, as long as you're safe, yes, it is valuable.
Tolu, if you don't mind, I'll
of course, go ahead.
It's my experience in throughout my career that sometimes I am the only Latina in the room, and I also need mentorship and sponsorship, right? So I think ERGs also play a fantastic role. If you are the only person in the room, that you're able to look around and say, okay, I know that this person's more senior than I am. I can relate. Maybe they can give me some tips. They can be sponsors where they can speak about you and open opportunities for you where you may not have had that access. So I think that in my previous lives, I've had that situation happen. I've been the sponsor. I've been the sponsored. So I think that that's another lens where you can think about ERGs, that it opens your network up and gives you those opportunities for mentoring and sponsorship.
So as I was saying to you earlier, as we were preparing this conversation, whenever I join a new firm, I always join the pride network of the firm I've just joined, just because it creates a psychological safety net for me. I feel like, although I would tend to view myself as being out and proud these days, I still believe that coming out to new people, especially in a workplace situation, can be extremely stressful. And I'm always fearful of the impact it can have on the relationships that I have with people at work. So joining an ERG for me is the first thing I do on day one when I join a new company. That said, yes, I believe that it creates opportunities. It helps you network with people you would normally not speak to within the same company. It gives you access to senior management, as we alluded to earlier. But I don't necessarily want to be too naive about it either. I still believe that maybe at some point it has closed doors for me, except that I wouldn't be able to gauge that because you never know. You never know what happens in the background, what people talk about behind closed doors, and I'll never be able to have visibility over this. But I do believe that for the most part, it has been an an extremely positive experience for myself.
Oh, thank you. Can we take one last question and say if you have one thing that you would add to this? So what specific strategies or initiatives can we implement to strengthen partnerships between our ERGs and local queer organisations? So if you've got any examples of how you've done that at Interbank, Marianne, or Judy and Hunter, if you've got any examples from your experiences.
Yeah, so I mean, Interbank is an incredible tool to bring all of the banks in the UK together and, for example, sponsor big initiatives like BFI Flare or the Red Run. If we were to do it as an individual firm, it would not have the same impact that it has. So for us, partnering up with Interbank or even with charity partners outside of Interbank is incredibly powerful. And within your own company, trying to orchestrate a partnership with other networks is also incredibly powerful because you have access to more budget, more resources, more volunteers, because sometimes you need a lot of hands on deck. And also it brings up conversations that you would not necessarily have with people if everybody stayed in their own little silos. So I really believe in joining forces all the time as much as you can.
I'll amplify, donate, sponsor these organizations. I think that, let's, these things are not free to run, right? So definitely that's part of that partnership, open your wallet. I think if you're thinking about like community organizations, I'm always big on going back into the academic field, into my universities and my high school, and making sure that they see, what an active ally looks like. I think that's important. I know that Omnicom has a fantastic Pride network, and they go out into the community. So I think representation and being seen is important. It creates I think people feel safer when they say, oh, that person is in this career and they were accepted. So I think that those are the ones that come to mind very quickly.
No, definitely. And I'll do one last quick build on how ERGs and local organisations can sort of strengthen partnerships. So things like mentoring is a really great way. And I know I'm in the tech industry, so where there's opportunities to connect on what I'm already doing, or if you're in another industry. So those are really strong ways that ERGs can bring expertise from what they're doing into that and bring those kind of partnerships. So I believe it is now I'm passing to Melis for some key takeaways and some next steps, I believe.
Yes, thank you so much, Tolu, Marion, Julie, Hunter, just for sharing all of this with us. I mean, it's been such an incredible conversation, just really landing into some of the key takeaways that stood out. As you can see there on the Mentimeter, really something that Julie said earlier in the beginning, really it's important to, that we learn to support the markets that we serve. How Hunter also flagged the fact that, underfunded ERGs and leaders who are also not remunerated, the pressure that adds on to creating change and effectively, I think also even create and have that time to become allies as well to other communities. We also saw that, and Marion was really talking about how we invite leadership into the conversation, and really, again, that balance of the responsibility that we all hold, but when we have to know that there is an opportunity, and also leveraging our privilege as well to know that when we are in the room, we can educate senior leaders and onboard them into really honoring the DI commitment. So a lot there, and we'll be able to share, I think, the link after this, but it's been really an enriching conversation. And so thank you everyone for the comments in the chat. I know there's a lot more that we can kind of touched on, but what we want to invite you to do as participants is to fill out a feedback survey that we've put together. For us, we create space, and even I think for the panelists and everyone here sharing their time and bringing forward their experience to know the challenges that you're facing within your organization. We saw that earlier in the poll. Many of you are fairly
creating synergies and integrating and seeing these conversations happen so we can learn from you, or you can bring other questions and as we explore the next steps and even how we potentially can inform our programming in the future. So next week, we're back again with a panel, and we hope to see you here. We'll be talking about creating opportunities for trans equity. Again, leaders within our collective coming to share their stories, but also specifically looking at workplace solutions as well. So we hope to see you here and your questions and ideas as well. So on that note, I think Trish has shared the link. Yeah, we've got the QR code here. Please give us your feedback. And that's it. All leaves me to say thank you to the team. Once again, thank you also to the team internally, Trish and everybody else who made this happen and possible. And we hope to see you again soon.